when you say this, it doesn't imply that things above it that would also drop down.
And I'm home.
You know, so you
Well,
need to say that.
Yeah, and that's, yeah.
It's basically
really-
dropping that whole thing.
Right, that volume.
Right, right. So you
And then
need
they drag it on for years.
Good evening. Good evening. The Design Review Board public meeting of March 8, 2018 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate cell phones at this time. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants on any of the applications to be reviewed this evening, are asked to completely fill out one of the speaker's cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be asked to speak by the board when your case is called. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project in the event of a return for redesign must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current DRB agendas are available by calling or by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. And a handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB appeal is available from staff. Roll call. Ms. Arzumanian.
Here.
Mr. Benlian.
Here.
Mr. Charchian is absent. Mr. Malikian.
Present.
Mr. Simonian.
Present.
Report regarding the posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on March 1st, 2018. Oral communications. Is anybody in the audience wishing to speak on an item not a part of this agenda? Do you have? Well, we don't have a chair yet, so I don't think there are any. We can move down to basically staff announcements. We do need a chair pro tem for this meeting since Mr. Charchian is not in attendance.
I move to elect Mr. Bellion as the chairman pro tem for
I
today.
second that.
Okay. Great, thank you. Staff doesn't have any staff announcements, but let me go over the procedures of the meeting real briefly. I will give a brief overview of the project. Then the applicant or the applicant's representative will be asked to come forward stating both the name and address and interest in the project. They will have 5 minutes to speak. The board may ask questions at this time. Then others in support of or in opposition to the project will be asked to come forward, clearly stating both name and address. Each speaker will be allowed 2 or 3 minutes to speak. And then the applicant will be given the opportunity to make any closing comments and have 2 minutes to do that. The hearing will be closed and then the board will discuss the project amongst themselves and render a decision. Board members may ask questions of anyone, but there will be no debate or further comment taken. The board may entertain staff's comments and recommendations during its deliberation prior to making a decision. Records of decisions for all projects will be posted online at the Planning Division's website. Please note that all appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the DRB decision date. So the first item on the agenda, I'll just go over PDR 1725824 at 1762 Allen Avenue is being continued, and we will renotice that project. All right. The second item on the agenda is PDR 1728888. It's at 2413 Gardner Place. And if
Yeah, we can start with
you are ready, I'm ready. So.
Ready.
All right. Again, The only item this evening is case number 1728888. It's a review of a proposal to construct a 3-story, 3,378 square foot single-family residence with a 2-car garage in the R1R zone with a floor area ratio District 2. The project is located at 2413 Gardner Place. The site consists of 2 lots and is approximately 12,576 square feet in area. Staff would like to note some changes to the plan since you received them. Basically, the new set of plans is located on your desk. Basically, the changes are to the retaining walls on each side of the proposed residence, and they were made to they were made so that the site plan and the elevations were internally consistent. There will also be some changes in the staff report as well as the conditions since you've received that packet, and I will go over them throughout my presentation. All right. Okay. The site planning for the project is appropriate for the neighborhood because the homes in the neighborhood surrounding the subject site really there isn't a predominant site plan design. It's pretty eclectic. The site plan for the proposed residence is not atypical and therefore is consistent with the neighborhood. Additionally, the front-loaded garage is typical in the neighborhood, and the proposed residence follows the slope of the topography. As the topography goes up from the street, so does the house. Staff does recommend a couple of conditions. The first is that the driveway width be reduced such that is no wider than the garage door. If you look at the site plan, the driveway is wider than really needed to access the garage door. So we would recommend reducing that width. And then the second item I'd like to talk to you about is some amendments to the landscape plans. One of the recent changes that was made was to the western retaining wall, the retaining wall west of the house. And what we would suggest is, I should say it's 5 feet in height, so it complies with code. But staff would recommend installing plants adjacent to it, either or in front of the wall so that they climb up the wall, or in back of the wall so they hang down from the wall, just to soften the appearance of this wall. And that was something new that wasn't discussed in the staff report you got. Mass and scale of the residence is appropriate because the taller massing of the residence is located on the upslope side of the property. So the house steps back with the topography. In addition, the roof form is simple and also follows the slope of the site. Staff also recommended some floor plane changes to the residence, and the discussion in the body of the staff report wasn't really consistent with the condition that we suggested at the end of the staff report. So I want to clarify this a little bit. In the staff report you got, we discussed lowering, in the body of the staff report, we discussed lowering the garage plate 2.5 feet. Currently, the garage is 11 feet in height, and we suggested reducing that to approximately 8.5 feet. And then consider lowering the plate height of the first living level, which is the one that has siding on it now. And that plate height was originally 10 feet, and we had recommended reducing it by 1 foot. In the end, what we are recommending is just simply a 2.5 foot reduction in the garage plate height and no reduction in the first living level plate height. And so that wasn't really accurately reflected in the body of the report. And at the end of the presentation, I will go over how that changes the condition.
Okay, so I'm not clear. Is that the condition, or is that what we're asking for?
The condition that staff is recommending is lower the plate height of the garage by approximately 2.5 feet. And with that, what we were thinking is the entire garage would lower by 2.5 feet. And then at some point at the first living level, there would be a step down, sort of like a split level.
Okay.
And that would reduce massing in that area.
So we're not asking for them to essentially keep the plate where it is and just lower the entire building down. So it's just a step down in the living. Anything past the, I guess you can call it grid line 8, or is it a grid line? Yeah.
Well, it's I mean, roughly in the middle of the garage.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah. So that was what staff was envisioning. I mean, that's our recommendation. You all can.
Well, I've found several things. Are you done, or?
No.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So that condition would read lower the floor plate of the garage by approximately 2 feet, which would then infer there was some split level. Finally, as related to mass and scale, staff recommends that the double height windows at the garage and bedroom area, which is in the eastern part of the house, as well as the transom windows that are located in the master bedroom and the entry, and then in a couple other places throughout the house. All those transom windows be eliminated. It just it exacerbates some massing. Finally, design and detailing. The design and detailing of the residence is appropriate for a couple of reasons. The entryway is appropriately highlighted without being really overbearing. It's not a double height. It's rather modest. The windows and the finished material are of high quality and include wood-clad garage door as well as windows. Staff is recommending that in the plans call for a vinyl-clad wood window, and we're suggesting that be a fiberglass-clad wood window. So, finally, the proposed balcony located off the master bedroom faces the street and will not pose privacy issues. So those were a couple of reasons why we thought the mass and scale were fine. The board should consider adding some adding some siding in the area between the on the lower level of the garage, and then within the eaves of the first level, just so that the building has more, is more cohesive, consistent, instead of stucco, striped stucco, or stucco siding stucco. In addition, the stucco is a what is called a crystal white color, and really should be changed to a more natural color to be consistent with the hillside design guidelines. The color is a little different in the material board, which should be passed around, than what's up there. It looks pretty bright on the elevation drawings, but is a little more muted actually. But that's something you should consider. And then the final thing is, and this is something new, there's a trash enclosure that's not on the elevations but shown on the site plan. Staff recommends recessing that trash enclosure slightly so that it's not in line with the garage facade, and also recommends that the design of the gate and materials of the gate be reviewed and approved by staff. So that'll be an added condition. That concludes my presentation, although I would like to go over the conditions of approval just because they're a little different than what you have, what you received last week. So the first condition, and I've got copies of the report and the conditions if you want to just go through.
Can we go through it afterwards?
Sure, yeah, that's fine.
I do have a couple of questions. Go for it. And these are more clarification, and hopefully I'm not doing my math right, and so that the plans are okay. So according to the slope calculations, the lot is 66.4%, correct?
That sounds right.
Okay. And the lot is in an R1R District 2, correct?
Correct.
So if it's over 40%, the first 10,000 is 30%, correct?
Yes,
Correct.
And then after 10,000, it becomes 10%, correct?
correct.
So the maximum FAR with my math is coming 3,257.64.
Okay.
And they have 3,378 plus the 80 square feet additional 500 square foot of garage. So they're 200 square foot over what they're allowed to build, correct? Or am I doing something wrong?
Well, let me check this.
Okay.
The slope.
Okay, I'm going by their number. I'm not, I mean, they.
It's on the cover sheet.
It's on the cover sheet.
Okay.
The second question that I want to, and this goes to kind of catty corners with the plate height that you guys talked about. The slope, I just looked at the driveway slope. So in the Glendale Municipal Code, the driveway slope maximum allowed in an R1R for a single-family house you can have is a 20% slope, correct?
Correct.
And based on the transition, that if we go with the 20%, I know engineering will probably dictate the 5-foot transitions, upper and the lower.
Okay.
So based on the 18-foot, I mean, this is basically a standard that I've always used, and it works right. It's about 2.5 to 2.6 feet of transition that you can go either up or down based on the 18-foot setback. The first 5 and the last 5 is half the 20%, which is 6 inches, and then the middle 8 foot that it's left is 20%, which is 1.6, so technically it's 2.6. Right now they have an 8-foot transition between the street and the garage level. So there's almost a 4.5, 4.5 foot difference. So
Double the limit.
almost double, if not triple the limit. So with that said, was there a agreement or something that has happened that we should know about, or is it something that a correction that needs to occur in the plan?
There was no agreement. None that I know of.
What I'm saying is, was there like a administrative exception?
No.
Okay.
No, and as I know, the applicant hasn't talked to engineering about it.
Okay. Because these two specific conditions, setting the garage and 200 square feet, it's going to drastically change this, both the
Yeah,
elevation height. Okay, why don't you look at?
I'm gonna have
no,
to
what-
review
what-
the
yeah.
slope,
Yeah,
because initially it was, there were some calculation errors done, and it was a lot less than 66%. So,
okay,
yeah.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions for staff? Okay, we'll go ahead and close. We'll open the public comments. We'll start with the architect, Raphael.
Well, my name is Rafael Santiago Diepa. I'm the architect for the project. As you know, the site is extremely challenging, and as you were discussing, and now that we are asked to reduce the height of the plate, it's going to make even more difficult because we will have to reduce the height of the entire house, and as we push it back, it creates more of retaining wall. So is this something that it will be taken care of at the specific detail level? I'm aware of the 20% slope, and that will be a part of the final drawings when we get to that point. I think that because of the slope of the site, it almost forces the house to be wide in the east-west direction, and the intent was to reduce the massiveness by using the horizontal siding. I don't have any issue with the colors. I think we are more than willing to bring the colors more in line with the natural site, the colors on the site. We don't have any problems of removing the transom windows if it's going to improve the design. I think it would be problematic to do a split level, as Mr. Kiesel was suggesting, because it will create difficulties on the upper level, on the sleeping room level. So my desire would be to keep the levels as they are. We will try working with the plate heights, reducing the overall height of the house. Definitely will comply with the recommendations as to color, landscape, no problem there. And increasing the siding throughout the house to make it, I guess, more attractive. So anyway, any other questions if you have, we're more than willing to discuss.
Mr. Malikan, you want to ask?
No, just, this is the point that we would want to see all of these elements addressed. We're not going to be able to, I'm not going to be able to allow this to move on and then let these major design elements, in my opinion, I don't know about my colleagues to allow, but at this point it needs to get resolved rather than going to the engineering and then dealing with lowering the entire building 4.5 feet. I mean, it's just black and white. It's in the code. So if it needs to be drawn that way, this is a design review. We're reviewing the design, not conceptual plans. So as far as the slope is concerned or the area of the building, those we need to look at the correct set of plans, in my opinion. So just wanted to clarify that because you said it'll happen at the final set of drawings. It's not going to happen that way. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next speaker, the owner, Henry. Henry Laguna.
Basically, what,
State your name and address.
oh, thank you. Oh, say it out. Okay, it's 2313 Gardner Place. Well,
Your name for the record?
my name is Henry Laguna. Basically, I'm just wondering, we presented the plans 4 months ago. Before that, we had 4 meetings earlier here with City Hall, and all these concerns were there. We presented what we were intended to do at that time, and I am a little bit surprised that something as basic as what you are talking about, we're discussing so later in the project. The driveway height was something that we discussed many times, and also the size of the property that we're proposing to build in the land that we own. So I am a little bit perplexed to find out that after all this time, such a basic questions are arriving.
May I?
Go.
So I don't, and I will tell you, I'll express your concern, and I appreciate that. I don't think it's staff's responsibility at this level to check these basic requirements that are given as a zoning. And technically, we shouldn't even get into that. But what is going to happen, and I'll tell you, if let's say, if for whatever reason we decide that everything is fine and we move ahead and we give you the approval, you move ahead and you go to the final set of plans that you prepare, as your architect mentioned, and you find out that you have a 65% slope driveway instead of a 20% slope driveway, your entire building design is going to change. In order for your plans to get submitted into plan check, you need to take these plans back to staff, have staff review that. If those drawings are not the same as what we have seen here and what we're going to approve today, if we approve it today, and if they do not match, you're going to be forced to come back here again. So it is not their responsibility to do a plan check for you. It is more of a responsibility of you as the architect and the owner to know what you're presenting to us. They look at this as more of a design review. Obviously, I'm assuming they're going to look at some basic zoning requirements. You know, obviously, you're not putting the building in the middle of the street. You're meeting all the setbacks and everything. But other than that, within our preview, we're looking at the design of the building. And by me just pointing out these items, it's just my experience with working with different projects in Glendale. I see those are basic stuff that we, at the beginning, that we start looking into these elements. So that's why I brought that up for you.
Now, considering that we have...
That will save you time, but we're not going to have.
Yeah,
a
so I
discussion.
just wanted to answer, and that's it. I just wanted to let you know and that.
Okay, very good. Now, I am still wondering, is that why is that didn't come into question before we presented?
Yeah, typically driveway slope, we don't look at it until plan check, and there was no information on driveway slope aside from, what's on the drawings. And
What about the size?
So
of the
we're not
The
going
si-
to have this
yeah.
conversation.
Well,
so.
yeah, I mean, I'll tell you right now, the size of the property, if what's on here is accurate, I did miss that, and it will need to be reduced.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Teresa Kuzmanovic.
Hello, my name's Teresa Kuzmanovich. I live at 2350 Pennerton Drive. I'm right above this project, which scares the hell out of me. I've been there since 1995. You're going to cut into my mountain, my hillside. there's a drainage there. I don't know what you're gonna do with the drainage. I mean, I'm very concerned. You know, every issue you can possibly think of, I'm worried about. I don't wanna go from one step to the other step, but I'm concerned about this whole thing because I never dreamed that a house would have been built there because I knew it was a small lot. I never dreamed that somebody would buy 2 lots. So I am a very concerned party, and I'm retired, so I am home every single day, and I'll be watching. And I am scared, and I want to make sure that the insurance and bond and everything is there in place if anything should happen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Next speaker, Janet Zoll.
Okay, my name's Janet Soul. I live at 2326 Gardner, which is west up the hill around the corner. And my concern is access. I've lived in Glendale all my life since I was 2 years old, and I'm over 70 now. I went to 3 of the grammar schools in Wilson and Glendale High, Glendale College, and I have a degree in fine arts and design and a paralegal certificate from UCLA. Anyway, that strip of street is so narrow. I don't know if you guys ever have the time to come out and look. It's really narrow. There's no parking allowed, and I'm completely concerned about parking. I cannot believe that that house only has a 2-car garage. To me, there needs to be a 4-car garage. There is no room anywhere to put a car on the street. You can't do that. I mean, when you go up and down, 2 cars meet each other, it's like, you know, you have to be careful that your side view mirrors don't hit each other. And there's also so little wiggle room in that little neighborhood that includes down Edwards, just down to the more flat street, and then up the hill, and then a little bit up the east side of Gardner. There's up beyond this house to the west, including Gardner, Pennerton, and Suncourt Terrace, there's 31 houses. Every single house has at least 2 cars. Lots of them have more. I have 2 cars, and I'm the only driver at my house. The guy across the street has 3 cars. He's a single guy. The people next door have 3 cars. There's 2 drivers there. Some people have 4 cars, and there's a couple of people who have 5. You know, yay, it's California, car culture, and we are in a demographic where we can afford it, and we're not going to change. Uber and Lyft are not coming into our neighborhood, hardly at all, maybe not at all, and it's not going to change. So when everything's so tiny and the houses are narrow, and when people come home at night, all night, they come and they don't have,
Got it. Thank you. We got the idea.
And all the big heavy trucks, you know, I got a list. And it's a fire road. It's access to a fire road.
We got it.
Fire department.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Daniel Pierce.
Yes, hello. I'm Daniel Pierce. I live at 2342 Gardner Place, which is just up around the bend from this property. And the staff report regarding massing and scale says the board should consider reducing the size of the residence to reduce its massive appearance. They noted that it's going to be the largest home in this neighborhood, and it'll be by far larger than the average size house there. So I agree with that recommendation. Although I do like the design of the house. It's a nice looking house. There was a mention of concern of drainage. I don't know if you take exhibits, but the staff report only has one picture of the property, and it's kind of at an oblique angle. You can't really tell what anything looks like, and I took some pictures, so I don't know if you accept any exhibits, but the drainage they're talking about is a concrete channel that runs down the full length of the hillside.
Yeah, you can bring it over.
Yeah, okay. It runs down the full length of the hillside, right down the center of the property. Was probably on the property line of the two lots, and there's probably an easement there too. So I didn't see any mention in the staff report about how that's going to be dealt with, although I didn't read it close, in great detail. But I'm concerned about that, about how that drainage is going to be handled. And then the width of the street, as was mentioned, I went and measured it right in front of the garage. The width of the street is 17 feet 9 inches in front of the garage there. There's no sidewalks. People walk up and down there all the time, walking their dogs and walking with their children, and it's only 17 feet 9 inches width. And there's maybe room to put another 6 inches at most, because there's a big oak tree right there. And so I got some pictures there that I took. The last picture, I think, is of a UPS truck. Right, that UPS truck is directly in front of the property, and you can see the width of the street compared to that UPS truck. And so I'm concerned about the construction, how long, this is probably a couple-year project. All the construction there, where are all the employees going to park their cars? Where are all the construction equipment going to be placed? How are people going to have access through there? Thank you.
Thank you. Last speaker, Richard Scoggins.
To echo the concerns of the.
Name and address.
Oh, sorry, Richard Scoggins, 2351 Gardner Place, so I'm right beside the next house up from the proposed property. And I would agree with what's been said before, especially the narrow streets. I have two grandchildren that live with us, and they go down to the park and whatever else are on the streets, and you get like the water trucks going by and whatever. There's like no room at all. So the streets are already very busy for a street that ends. And there are other children on the street and so forth. So very concerned about the property being even busier than it already is. Also concerned about the size of the lot and how far in the mountain they're going to have to chop down. So I know that it's not the house. I thought the house was going to be a lot smaller than what turned out, and I talked to the people that bought it, and they seemed to indicate it was going to be substantially smaller, like 2,400 square feet versus whatever it is, 30 something. And so the lady who lives above the house is concerned about the chopping down of the hill, and a fair amount's of that's going to have to go. And so I'm very concerned about that. And of course, I live just up from there because I'm concerned about the water flow and so forth with the culvert. So I just have a number of concerns about the situation. I think it'd be great to have a house there, but I think it'd be better if it was a bit smaller rather than what's been proposed.
Thank you. You forgot to mark your card in favor, in opposition, interested party.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'd be in opposition of the proposal the way it is now. I'm not opposed to having a house there.
Got it. Thank you. So the architect can come back for a rebuttal period. How many minutes does he have? 2 minutes.
Yeah, regarding the culvert, we investigated and there's no easement for the culvert. The second thing is we did a soils report, and the hill is bedrock, it's right at surface. So the soils engineer's recommendation is that provided that safe excavation is done, the site is feasible for this type of development.
I have a question for you.
Insofar as the cut and fill calculation is concerned,
Mm-hmm.
do you know how much earth you'll be cutting and how much earth you'll be taking
Yeah,
out?
I think we said
I thought you told me about 1,000.
1,000 cubic yards, yeah.
Have you done a detailed cut and fill plan?
No, not yet.
And done any sort of a grading plan where you start to look into the retaining walls, locating them, and actually going into a level of detail of identifying the top of the walls
Yes.
and how they relate to the existing contours and then the bottom of the walls and the
Right.
pads that they create? Has that kind of an analysis been done?
Not at this level. However, on the exhibits, if you look, I think it's the section. I think it's sheet 8. The one in the middle behind you there. If you look at the upper left, there's elevations of the retaining wall at the upper level,
Yes.
looking back and to the sides. That it relates to the slope.
Yeah, and I noticed that, and you had, I think, a finished floor elevation of a 92 for the garage. And
Right.
when I looked at your survey, it seemed as though the contour at the bottom of the survey, or the way that it's depicted, it was about 84.
Okay.
And so now you had an 8-foot difference.
Okay.
But when I'm looking at your renderings, that doesn't seem to be an 8-foot difference, really, from the top of curb to your finish slab or the bottom of the garage.
Or the
door.
garage.
And so it does seem, well, not seem is the wrong word, it's just not depicted correctly.
Correct.
So in other words, there's going to be a lot more, I think, of a cut than what you're anticipating at this moment. Especially if
Get
you're
to the
trying to lower the garage level. And so that's why I was wondering if you had done that kind of a study.
Not to that level. But however, the design, as shown, takes in consideration that there's an upper area that is flatter, and the garage is going to be located so we're trying to fit the house to the topography, and then we have the retaining wall on the back to create some space for the bedrooms of the upper level. So that's why it's difficult to lower the garage and keeping the height of the retaining wall at 15 feet. So there's a lot of things going on at the same time.
We understand. Have you looked into multiple retaining walls at the top?
I think there's a section, yes. In fact, the design has, if you look at the upper section there, you see that there's at least 2 retaining walls in each level, and then 1 retaining wall at the garage level. So actually there are 3 retaining walls. So this concept of stepping back. And you see a small section, the side section, right in the middle there, you see there's an upper retaining wall, a middle retaining wall, and a lower retaining wall at the garage. So there's that stepping back. I mean,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any more questions? Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll close the public hearing and we'll open up the deliberation. You want to start, Mr. Miller?
Sure. So, I'm not going to repeat what I discussed as far as the errors that we have in the numbers and the building itself. As you study the plans, you find quite a bit of questionable elements there. The rendering that it's been prepared, and the slope of the street and the grades and everything else, somehow it's something is off. Something is not really appearing properly. There's about a 10-foot difference at the far end, which is the south end, I guess you want to call it, or as you're standing in the front, you're looking at the left end of it. There's about a 10-foot difference between the street and the pad area, and there's a study that needs to happen. Having said all of this with the size and everything else, I think the direction of the house, the design, the style, I like that. I like it fits within the area. It is compatible within the neighborhood. It is a nice gesture to the the area that is going in, all the woodsy feel that it's there. I think it's still lacking some detail elements there at the building. I agree with staff that adding the siding, the elements the staff has suggested, I think it's definitely going to help. The color, I think that's going to help. I think the other thing that it's missing is something, a little bit more of a craftsman details, that it's just a very slight gesture of craftsman. The windows don't make the craftsman. The post and beam, the outriggers that it's missing, the wood element that comes in and creates these exaggerated overhangs, somehow some support rather than stuccoing under them. I know it's a fire zone, so there's some challenges there, but I think those details are going to definitely help to soften and bring that additional detail that it's missing, that it will pull it together. Also, some of these homes, having this exaggerated overhang, gutters become an important part of the detailing of the building. Where do they sit? What kind of gutters are there? Are they round gutters? Are they, I don't want to spend their money, but are they copper? Are there, some nice features that it's missing also. There's a level of, that I think once that comes in, I think it will bring the project into a much better design level that it needs to be. Typical picket railing, as it's drawn, I think it's lacking that little craftsman detailing of the handrails. It is a dominant part of the whole facade, so I think it will allow the architecture to come out and be a lot stronger. Light fixtures, are they going to be any light fixtures? Are they going to propose anything? So that is missing as well. In overall, I think it's in the right direction. I think it needs some improvement as far as the detailing. But to be honest with you, I just did the numbers. I honestly, I mean, my hats will go off to you, Mr. Architect, but I have no idea how you're going to make this building lower and meet the code requirements. I mean, this thing, you're setting that your finished grade for the garage 892. It needs to be 886. So it's like quite a bit of cutting into the hill, lowering it, and so on. Your rendering is correct. It should look something like that, but it's not. The problem is what you're going to end up at the back side. I honestly don't know if it's going to meet the retaining wall height requirements that you have on the back side. And I don't know if it's going to give you a reference of the actual code numbers. You take your section, whatever your second floor, the top level is, the maximum height based on your numbers, and I'm not going off of that, your number's 884 where you're entering the garage from the street level, 35 feet plus the 2.6 feet that you can come up the driveway. It's 6.5 feet above the finished floor of your second floor. The entire thing above that is over the height limitation. So honestly, I don't know how that's going to get resolved by just having this type, so that's where I am right now. Thank you.
Sarzamani?
So that's a big concern. I like the design. It looks nice, and with adding the details that Mr. Malikian mentioned, we can obviously enhance it even further. But first of all, reducing the size, it should not obviously be a consideration at this point. It needs to be in condition, and drastic changes need to happen in order to make sure, first of all, it's aligned with the code, it passes the code requirements. And obviously that's gonna change the design. So I'm not sure if approving it as it is, it's a good idea without making sure that the numbers are gonna match at the end. I know we're not at the engineering point and we're not looking at the details of it. We're reviewing the designs, but that's a big part of it. Are we gonna come back here again to review the design after it changes to meet the codes? So that's a big concern, and we need to address that, I think.
Thank you. Mr. Solani?
I agree with my colleagues overall. The design and the aesthetics of it insofar as the look of it and the way the proportions, let's say, of your openings and how it relates to your roof and eaves, etc., have come together nicely. I also notice that, you know, you've kind of gone about it the right way in trying to take the site where the pad is and then do some sort of a building around it and looking at the contours. And so I appreciate that as well. And I think it's kind of the first step, right? So a lot of good things have happened to a certain extent. And the thing about City of Glendale that's more unique as it pertains to the Design Review Board is that by the time an applicant comes in front of us, especially as it relates to hillside properties, we're really expecting that there's a lot more grading done up front, grading design, civil design, retaining wall design, drainage design, etc., right? And when those studies are done early, you know, all of a sudden you start to understand the top of walls of retaining walls, the bottom of walls, the pads, the confill calculation, and how overall the building is going to be situated on the site. And I think that's the next step here is how to get it there. As Mr. Malakian pointed out with your calculations, we still haven't gotten verification from staff, but for point of discussion, let's say we're about 200 square feet over at this point in time. So we realize, and that's really the maximum, right? And we try to discourage going up to the maximum because that's how you end up with a lot of mass and bulk, etc. So assuming that the calculation is correct, we realize that the square footage is going to be reduced. And so some suggestions that I might have is on the left side of the property, you know, you put your garage here, and as you're seeing, it's creating a big driveway. Well, at this point in time, there's about only a 4 or 5 foot difference, the way it's depicted here at least, between this top of curb and this flat area. So if this building were to get narrower and the garage would actually come here and get tucked in underneath that area, let's say, and so doing, then you're not going to have as much of that area to deal with. But then the building gets smaller. On the other hand, now you got to deal with what's happening behind you, right? And how those calculations come in. And you could have multiple retaining walls at the rear instead of one big one. You have a flat area that you're using as a yard right now, which is positive. So you might not be able to have a yard at the rear. You know, you might only end up with a yard on the side. And so I think some compromises need to be made, starting at a very general site planning and grading exercise to see your options of what's going to yield you kind of the best compromises, you might say, architecturally speaking, and what's acceptable to the clients. And then, you know, you kind of go down that road. But overall, the vision of the architecture and the design of the facade and all those things, I think, are in the right direction. Now, it's going to change drastically once you start taking all this into consideration. And so, I concur. I think it needs to come back with some of the conditions that staff's already put forward, plus some other ones, as Mr. Malekian pointed out, such as verification of the FAR calculation, number one. Number two, I would say that we would want to include some sort of a grading study along with some sort of a retaining wall study. Those could go together as one drawing. Part of that, you could start addressing the culvert and how you're going to bring that water around your building. So you want to start looking into that as well at this point in time. Insofar as the width of the street is concerned, I actually disagree with some of the conditions that's been put forward. I think a wider driveway perhaps is the way to go here. If you have a wider driveway, A, you can put more cars on it if you need it, and number two is you're going to have more of a flexibility to turn as you're backing up, because when you have a 17-foot street and you have a narrow driveway. So I would say that overall I would support a lot of the comments made by staff, but not every single one of them, and then some additional ones as I described.
Thank you, Mr. Simonian. So I'm not going to go in detail since I see my colleagues are going in the direction of resending this thing for redesign. Mr. Malikan, you want to say
I have a
something?
question on the condition that fiberglass wood window. What is that? I've never. Is that
Fiberglass clad wood window.
Oh, clad.
Yeah.
Okay. So the wood clad, it's not. I mean, it's not exposed. It's inside. So
Correct.
yeah. So we only see fiberglass.
Correct.
You see fiberglass from the
Okay,
outside.
I just want to make sure. I know what it is. I just want to make sure everybody else knows. 'Cause when you say wood, everybody thinks that they're going to see wood, but it's not wood. It's actually fiberglass that's going to get painted.
It's a good clarification. So I concur with my colleagues. I think the design is going in the right direction. I like the architecture. I think it fits within the style of the neighborhood. But I see major concerns, and I think Mr. Malikian and Mr. Simonian and Mr. Arzwanian brought really important things that you need to look at, because they might kill your project and your design. And once you start looking at all these issues and site constraints, you might not be able. The final vision might not look like this. So. So how are we going to do that? Are we going to have a read of
Want to go
conditions?
through the conditions? I mean, I can go
Yeah,
down.
we can go through the conditions, and then, you know, we may need help on some of the other ones.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, let's start with like the overall conditions that are new.
Should we do first staff conditions and
Yeah, we can.
let's do your conditions and then we'll add to it.
You want to do that first?
So the first one, lower the floor plate of garage and first floor living area by at least 1 foot.
The revised one is lower the plate height of the garage by approximately.
May I interject for 1 second?
Go for it, Mr. Simon.
I think based on where we're going, that condition is going to come kind of moot point, because the whole thing is going to be reassessed.
Exactly.
I agree.
And so, you know, for sure, I think as far as the holistic ones, I would think we want to start with the holistic ones that you had kind of come up with as
Okay.
conditions. And then we could very quickly go down and see if any of the other ones even apply
So
anymore.
I can go ahead and,
Yeah.
so then we need to have a study of the driveway, a diagram or something that meets the city of Glendale minimum requirement, which is a 20% slope, or I should say maximum, which is a 20% slope.
Should we start with the, FAR verification? Get that,
FAR
and size.
verification.
have that as the first, can't go anywhere till we know that. From that, we can go.
The square footage, the size.
Right. And And then as a third one is a grading study as it relates to retaining walls
Retaining wall.
and site drainage.
Driveway.
And then the fourth, I guess, could be, as Mr. Malikian just pointed out, a study of the driveway as it meets City of Glendale code.
Okay, we had FAR as the first one. We did the third one as grading and retaining walls. What was the second one in there?
The size?
What was it?
You said size as the second one, so that could be part of number one, I guess.
Yeah, FAR and size.
Yeah, it was
So we'll make that
basic
number
FAR.
one,
Okay, so then grading, doing the retaining walls.
grading and retaining walls.
Right,
And-
grading study as
And
it
drainage.
relates to retaining walls and
Right.
drainage.
Then the driveway is the next one,
Driveway study
To-
to meet city.
to get the maximum allowable slope.
So those are the overarching ones.
Right.
Oh,
Then,
and a cut and fill, cut, fill, and export analysis as well. You might want to tag that on as a number one.
With the grading study?
With the grading study.
With the grading study.
The grading study.
and then, once we get, once we can get something that's workable here, assuming they proceed with this sort of craftsman style, we would have them ramp up the detailing, the gutters, the railing details, the
Just
siding
support
colors.
the eaves, over exaggerated
Right.
eaves and
Right.
underside of the eaves and all that. Whatever that they're allowed to do within the fire zone.
Right.
And now, as far as the staff conditions, I would say number one is a moot point.
I agree.
Number two is eliminate the second set of windows above the garage and guest bedroom and transom windows. We could, I think, reword that to eliminate transom windows with the redesign. Number three was a good one as far as the color is concerned and not going with the bright white. Number four, we haven't really addressed, so I'll leave that aside for a moment. Number five, I don't think it's a wise move to say narrow the driveway as much as possible. I think,
I agree with you. I
Yeah.
would strike that if,
That's more of a staff condition rather than a code condition, right?
No, the code says you can't have a driveway wider than what's needed to access the parking, basically.
I would say in this scenario, I don't know if we want to put this in as a condition, but I think the direction that at least I'm saying is, a reasonably wider driveway would probably help the parking situation and also the radius turns.
Can we do that? Can we say that it goes against its?
Yeah, I think you can. I mean, they will need to comply with code with this, but whether it's, the 16.5 garage door width or the 20 driveway width of the actual garage, that's where we can look at. I mean, if it gets more than 20 or so feet, then what we don't want is driveway leading up to a blank facade.
I think it's a code recommendation. It's not, the code doesn't prohibit you from having.
Yeah, I think there's a
Little
certain
wider, yeah.
percentage that you could take as far as the front yard is concerned.
As large as possible.
As large as possible.
That code allows.
Yeah, that's right. Insofar as the windows, I'm okay with fiberglass windows. I don't need.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Oh, so we'll just go with fiberglass windows as opposed to fiberglass wood clad.
So fiberglass windows?
Yeah.
Yes. Consideration number one has already been dealt with the new conditions, and consideration number two was a good one that could be,
I think that should be a condition.
yeah, it would be integrated into your condition insofar as
Right.
the overall design and the details.
It's a good thought.
Okay, and then we had two added conditions, install plants which will climb up and/or hang below the 5-foot high retaining wall. Now, that may change as a result of the redesign, but eliminate that one.
Well, it's a good
Just
idea to
keep that
I
in
think we
mind
should-
for
we should
any
have it there.
Okay,
mask the retaining walls as much as possible.
yeah, and then the trash enclosure shall be set back from the garage facade, and design materials of enclosure shall be submitted to staff for review and
I
approval.
like that.
Okay,
What about the consideration?
I'll move to return for redesign with conditions.
I second.
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
Mr. Simonian?
Okay. This will be a roll call. Mr. Malikian,
Yes.
Mr. Simonian,
Yes.
Ms. Arzamanian,
Yes.
and Mr. Benlian.
Yes.
Great. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Have we had any minutes?
We don't have any minutes. We have not finished them from last week.
Okay.
I move to adjourn.
Adjourned.